I had always believed that my life would remain the same, as steady and predictable as the rows of wheat that stretched across my farm. Morning light spilled over the hills, and I would rise before the sun to tend to the soil, trusting that the rhythm of planting and harvesting was all life required. That was, until the day she arrived. Her name was Layla, and she appeared as if carried by the desert winds themselves, graceful, quiet, and almost otherworldly. I remember thinking it strange that someone so foreign, so entirely out of place in our sleepy village, would offer to help a simple farmer like me. Yet, there she was, asking to work beside me, her hand steady, her gaze unwavering. The first day, I watched her move through the fields with an ease I had never seen before. She spoke little, but when she did, her words had a peculiar weight, as though they carried secrets from far-off lands. I thought it odd, yet comforting, how quickly she seemed to understand the rhythm of my farm, knowing which plants needed care and which tasks could wait. By evening, I realized I had not asked her why she had come. There was something in her eyes, a glimmer of purpose that made me suspect her reasons were far more important than mere work. That night, I lay awake on my small cot, the quiet of the farmhouse broken only by the distant calls of night birds. I could not shake the feeling that my life, once so predictable, had just taken a turn into the unknown, and I was right. I did not yet know how profoundly she would change everything I thought I knew about my farm, about myself, and about the world that seemed so much larger than the borders of our little village. Days passed, and the rhythm of the farm slowly changed, not in the way I worked, but in the way I saw everything. Layla had a way of noticing things that I had long taken for granted, the subtle tilt of the soil, the whisper of the wind through the wheat, the quiet fatigue in my own hands. She would pause mid-task, her dark eyes studying a plant or an animal, and then gently guide me to do something I had never considered. At first, I resisted. Change is always frightening, and I was a man who had lived decades in the comfort of routine, but there was no denying that the farm flourished under her quiet attention. One evening, after a long day of toil beneath the scorching sun, we sat near the edge of the orchard. She handed me a small cup of mint tea, its aroma mingling with the sweet scent of the ripening fruit. For the first time, I asked her the question that had been gnawing at me: why are you here? Why help me, a simple farmer, when the world is so large? Layla smiled softly, but there was something hidden behind her eyes, like a door she had not yet chosen to open. Sometimes, she said, the people who seem ordinary carry the most extraordinary potential. I am here because you are on the edge of something you cannot yet see. Her words struck me like a sudden storm. What could she possibly mean? I had lived my entire life within the boundaries of this farm. I had plowed, sowed, and harvested without ambition beyond survival and stability. And yet, her presence made me feel unsettled, alive, as though the ground beneath me was shifting in ways I could not yet understand. Over the following weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in myself. I woke earlier than ever, not out of obligation, but out of a restless curiosity. I found myself imagining possibilities for the farm that I had never dared to dream: new crops, new methods, even plans to trade with distant towns. Layla never forced these ideas, she simply planted seeds of thought, and they took root in the fertile soil of my mind. Then came the night of the storm. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing through the fields and bending the trees almost to the ground. I had never seen rain fall like that in all my life, sheets of water that blurred the world into chaos. I struggled to secure the barn doors, my hands raw and trembling, when I felt a calm presence at my side. Layla moved with a certainty that defied the raging storm, guiding me, steadying me. Her calmness was infectious, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly unafraid in the face of nature's fury. When the storm passed, the farm was battered but still standing, and something had shifted inside me. I realized that I had not just survived, I had begun to trust in a strength I never knew I possessed. It was then, in the quiet aftermath, that Layla told me the truth I had been waiting for all along. She had not come merely to help with the farm. She had come because my life was on the cusp of transformation. The world beyond this valley, she whispered, is not as distant as it seems. You are capable of far more than planting seeds and tending fields. There is a path ahead, but it will not be easy. You must be willing to let go of everything you know. Her words were both terrifying and exhilarating. I wanted to ask her how I could possibly step into a world I had never seen, but somehow, I knew that the answer would come in time. For now, I simply listened, feeling the weight of her gaze and the quiet power in her presence. I did not yet understand the magnitude of what was to come, but I felt it in my bones, the certainty that the life I had always known was about to be completely transformed. And it all began with Layla, the girl who had arrived like a desert wind and changed everything without even trying. The days that followed the storm were different from any I had ever known. The farm seemed alive in a way I had never felt before, as though the earth itself were whispering secrets I had been too blind to hear. And in the center of it all was Layla, moving through the fields with an almost mystical grace, her presence like a steady flame in the shifting shadows of my life. One morning, I awoke to find her sitting at the edge of the orchard, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun had barely begun to burn away the morning mist. I hesitated before approaching her, unsure if I wanted to hear what she would say next, but she looked up, and her gaze met mine with a knowing intensity that left me speechless. "There is more to this world than you have ever imagined," she said, her voice soft but urgent, "and more to you than you have allowed yourself to be. You will need to trust me, even when it feels impossible." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. Trust her? I barely knew this girl, yet something inside me, a deep, primal instinct, told me she was right. There was a pull, a force that drew me toward her and the unknown she represented. Over the following weeks, she began to teach me things I had never thought I would need to know. She showed me how to read the clouds to predict rain, how to feel the pulse of the soil beneath my feet, how to listen to the quiet rhythm of the world and find patterns in it. These were not lessons in farming alone, they were lessons in perception, in understanding life in ways that I had never considered. And then came the night she revealed the first piece of her secret. We were walking along the far edge of the fields when she stopped suddenly, turning to face me. Her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and for a moment, I thought I saw something beyond her human form, a depth, a power, that left me breathless. "You have been chosen," she said simply, "chosen for something far greater than this farm, far greater than this valley. But to step into what is coming, you must first let go of who you were." Her words hit me like a hammer. Let go of who I was? My life, my routine, my farm, everything I had ever relied upon. Was she asking me to abandon it all? Yet in that moment, I realized that my old life, while safe, had never truly fulfilled me. Something inside me, a spark I had long buried under years of labor and habit, began to ignite. The transformation was not immediate. I stumbled, resisted, doubted myself. But Layla was always there, patient and unwavering, guiding me with a subtle hand and a steady presence. Slowly, I began to see the world through her eyes, not just a series of tasks to complete, but a tapestry of possibilities, each thread waiting to be woven into a larger design. One afternoon, as the sun blazed high overhead, she led me to a small hill beyond the wheat fields. From there, the entire valley spread out before us, a patchwork of green and gold, rivers glinting in the light like silver threads. She turned to me and said, "Do you see it now? The life you imagined is only a fraction of what is possible. Beyond this valley, beyond these hills, your journey truly begins." My heart pounded in my chest. Fear and excitement warred within me. I had never left this valley in my life, never ventured beyond the horizon that cradled my farm. And yet, with Layla by my side, I felt the first true taste of freedom, the intoxicating thrill of stepping into the unknown, of becoming someone I had never dared to be. That night, as I lay in my cot, I realized something that both terrified and exhilarated me. My life was no longer mine to command. It had become something far greater, a journey guided by forces I could barely comprehend. And at the center of it all was Layla, the girl whose quiet determination had pulled me from the comfort of routine into a world of limitless possibility. I did not yet know where this path would lead, or what dangers and wonders awaited. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. My heart had been awakened, my spirit set in motion, and I could not turn back. And so, with the first light of dawn, I rose from my cot and walked into the fields, knowing that the life I had known, the life of a simple farmer, was over. Ahead lay uncertainty, adventure, and a destiny I had never imagined. All because of Layla. The next morning, the air was crisp with the lingering chill of dawn. The farm lay quiet, yet I could feel the tension coiling beneath its surface, as if it too sensed the change stirring within me. Layla had been silent since the previous night, her usual calm replaced by something sharper, more focused. I knew instinctively that whatever she was about to reveal would alter the course of my life again, and perhaps forever. We walked toward the edge of the forest that bordered the valley, the wheat swaying gently at our sides like golden waves. She moved ahead with purpose, her robes brushing the grass, and I followed, heart pounding, every sense alert. I had begun to trust her guidance implicitly, but with that trust came a new fear, fear of the unknown, fear of leaving behind the life I had spent decades building, and yet, a deep, unrelenting curiosity drove me forward. Finally, we reached a small clearing, encircled by towering pines whose branches whispered in the wind. There, in the center, lay an ancient stone tablet half buried in moss and dirt. Its surface was etched with symbols that glowed faintly, shimmering as if alive. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. "These symbols," Layla said, her voice reverent, "are part of a language older than any written history in this valley. They tell the story of those who were chosen before you, those who walked the path you are beginning now. And they tell of the trials you will face." I stared at the markings, trying to comprehend them. Strange feelings surged through me, fear, awe, and an almost unbearable sense of destiny. "Trials?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What kind of trials?" She met my gaze, her eyes dark and serious. "Not all journeys are meant to be easy. You will encounter forces that seek to stop you, people who will try to sway you from your path, and choices that will test the very essence of who you are. But do not be afraid. You have a strength within you, one that even you have yet to discover." Her words both comforted and unnerved me. I had always believed that life's greatest challenges were physical: storms, disease, the struggle of the earth itself. But now I realized that there were challenges of the heart and mind, dangers that could shape or shatter me entirely. Over the following days, Layla trained me in ways I could scarcely believe. She taught me to move silently through the forest, to sense the presence of creatures, human or otherwise, before they revealed themselves. She guided me in understanding patterns, learning to see connections between events, people, and even moments of chance. I felt as though I were awakening a part of myself that had long lain dormant, a part capable of seeing the hidden threads that wove through the world. Yet even as I grew stronger, the quiet tension never left me. There were moments when I would catch Layla staring into the distance, her expression troubled, her thoughts distant. I knew she carried secrets she was not ready to share, and I feared that one day, those secrets might change everything between us. Then, one night, as a blood-red moon rose over the valley, everything changed. A figure appeared at the edge of the farm, cloaked in shadows, moving with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. My heart leapt into my throat as I realized it was not an animal, but a human, someone who knew of Layla, someone who had come for us. Layla reacted instantly. She grabbed my arm, pulling me behind the tall wheat stalks, her movements fluid and practiced. "Stay low," she whispered. "Do not move unless I tell you. They will try to find you first, then me. But we are ready." I watched, frozen and terrified, as two shadowed figures moved through the field, scanning, listening, aware of every rustle. My mind raced. Who were they? Why were they here? And most importantly, what danger had Layla brought into my life simply by coming to my farm? Hours seemed to stretch into eternity, and then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the figures vanished into the night, leaving nothing but the rustling wheat and a sense of lingering menace. Layla turned to me, her expression fierce yet sorrowful. "This is only the beginning," she said. "You have stepped into a world you cannot yet understand. But remember this: every choice you make from this moment forward will define who you become, and whether you survive the path ahead. Trust in yourself, and trust in me." I nodded, though fear still gripped me, and yet beneath the fear was a growing ember of determination. Something had awakened in me, something primal and unyielding. I was no longer merely a farmer tending to wheat and soil. I was a man on the threshold of a destiny that stretched far beyond the horizon I had once feared to cross. That night, as I lay beneath the stars, listening to the wind weaving through the wheat, I understood a truth that both exhilarated and terrified me: life as I knew it was gone. From this moment on, every sunrise would bring new trials, new dangers, and new revelations. And through it all, Layla would be there, a guide, a protector, and perhaps, the key to unlocking the man I was meant to become. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything that had happened: the storm, the forest, the glowing tablet, the shadowed figures, and yet, amid the fear, I felt a strange, undeniable exhilaration. The world had expanded beyond the borders of my farm. I was no longer alone. And the journey had only just begun. The nights after the shadowed figures faded were restless. Sleep became a fragile illusion, and even in the quiet hours of dawn, my mind buzzed with questions I dared not voice. I could feel it in the air, an unspoken warning that the calm we had moments before was nothing but a fleeting mirage. Layla moved among the fields with her usual grace, but there was a hardness in her expression now, a shadow of memory she had not shared with me. It was during one of those early mornings, the sun barely cresting the horizon, that she finally spoke. We had climbed the hill beyond the valley, and she sat cross-legged, staring at the distant mountains like she had seen them in another life. "There is something I must tell you," she said, her voice low, trembling ever so slightly. "I did not come to this valley by chance. I was sent." My heart stuttered, and a cold knot of fear formed in my stomach. "Sent? Sent by who?" I asked, though a part of me already knew the answer would not be simple. Layla looked at me, her eyes dark, deep pools that seemed to contain centuries of knowledge. I am from a lineage of guardians, she said. Our purpose has always been to find those who are capable, those whose lives are ordinary on the surface but extraordinary in essence, and guide them toward what they were meant to be. You, my friend, are one of the chosen. The words hung in the air like lightning suspended in a storm. I wanted to laugh, to call it absurd, but her gaze held me captive. I felt the truth of it, the undeniable weight of destiny pressing against my chest. Chosen, for what? I whispered. To awaken what is dormant in you, she replied. To prepare you for the trials you will face beyond this valley. You will encounter forces that defy imagination, that seek to bend your will and crush your spirit, and you must be ready to confront them, not as a farmer, but as someone who understands the unseen threads of the world. I swallowed hard, trying to reconcile the life I had lived with the path she described. Every choice, every simple act of my past, plowing, sowing, tending to the animals, suddenly seemed like preparation for something far greater than I had ever realized. Then, she turned, her gaze distant, almost haunted. I have made enemies, she admitted. Enemies who have been hunting my lineage for decades. The men you saw were scouts, sent to observe, to test. They will return, and they will bring others. Their goal is not to kill me alone, but to destroy everything I protect, including you. A shiver ran down my spine. I had known fear before, the fear of storms, of failing crops, but nothing like this. My life, my home, my very sense of safety was being stripped away, replaced by an unknown battlefield where survival would demand more than strength of body, it would demand courage of heart, clarity of mind, and trust in someone I barely knew but now could not imagine being without. Layla reached out, taking my hands in hers. I know this is overwhelming. I know it feels impossible, but I have chosen to walk this path with you, and I will not leave your side. Together, we will uncover what you are capable of, and we will fight what comes. Over the next days, her training intensified. It was no longer just about perception, agility, or understanding the patterns of nature. She taught me to anticipate, to strategize, to harness the instincts buried deep within me. She showed me how to listen to the wind, not merely for weather, but for messages, subtle disturbances that hinted at movements, intentions, and dangers far beyond the valley. Yet even as I grew stronger, doubts lingered. Could I truly rise to this path? Could a man who had spent his life planting wheat and mending fences truly confront the forces Layla had hinted at? Every evening, I wrestled with fear and excitement, despair and hope, the duality of a life stretching into something far larger than I could yet comprehend. Then came the day the first trial revealed itself in tangible form. A storm unlike any before barreled through the valley, dark clouds roiling with unnatural intensity. The wind screamed like a living entity, twisting and bending trees, tearing roofs from barns, and driving animals into panicked frenzy. But this was no ordinary storm. I sensed it immediately, a force beyond nature, a presence that carried intent. Layla and I moved through the chaos together, guiding the animals to safety, reinforcing structures, but always aware of the unseen eyes watching, testing, probing. And then I understood, this was the beginning. The storm was not merely weather, it was a warning, a first taste of the power that would challenge everything I thought I knew. In the eye of the tempest, I caught sight of her, Layla, radiant and calm, commanding the storm with a presence that defied explanation. And at that moment, I realized the truth. The world I had known, the quiet life of a farmer, was gone forever. The man I had been was gone. In his place stood someone untested, uncertain, but alive in ways I had never imagined. When the storm passed, leaving the valley battered but standing, I turned to Layla. Her face was calm, yet there was a fire in her eyes I had never seen before. This is only the beginning, she said. The path ahead will demand everything from you, and one day soon, you will face a choice that will define not just your life, but the lives of countless others. I looked around at the shattered wheat, the overturned carts, the muddy tracks of animals running for safety, and then at her, my guide, my teacher, the girl who had walked into my life like a desert wind and changed everything. Fear still clutched my heart, but it was accompanied by a fierce exhilaration. The unknown stretched before me, vast and terrifying, yet I knew now that I could no longer turn away. The journey had begun in earnest. The past was gone, the present a battlefield, and the future, uncertain, but ripe with promise. And at the center of it all stood Layla, the girl whose secrets were many, whose power was undeniable, and whose faith in me was absolute. I took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the valley beneath my feet. I'm ready, I said, more to myself than to her. And she smiled, that calm, knowing smile that hid untold depths, and together we stepped forward, into the storm of destiny that awaited. The nights had grown longer, the air heavier, as though the valley itself were holding its breath. Since the storm, the tension had been constant, a thread of danger woven into every moment of sunlight and shadow. I had become accustomed to fear, not the kind born from wild animals or failing crops, but a fear that whispered of unseen enemies, of forces beyond comprehension. And yet, amid that fear, there was purpose, a strange exhilaration that stirred my very soul. Layla had become both guide and mystery. She shared fragments of her past, enough to ignite my imagination and curiosity, but never the full story. I knew only that she belonged to an ancient line, guardians tasked with protecting the balance between ordinary lives and extraordinary destinies. Yet even that knowledge only deepened the enigma. Who were her enemies, and what power did they wield? One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon in streaks of fire and gold, she led me to a hidden cave at the edge of the forest. Its mouth was nearly invisible, masked by hanging vines and shadows. Inside, she said, her voice a low whisper, you will learn the truth of who I am and of who you are meant to become. But be warned, the knowledge comes at a cost. Once you see it, there is no turning back. I followed, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. The cave walls were cold, damp, and etched with symbols similar to the ones on the tablet we had discovered weeks ago. As we walked deeper, the faint glow of phosphorescent moss illuminated the path, revealing a massive chamber. In its center stood a pedestal, and upon it, an ancient scroll that seemed to hum with energy. Layla approached it reverently. This scroll contains the history of my lineage, the Guardians, their trials, and the enemies who have sought to extinguish our line for centuries. You must understand this if you are to survive what is coming. I stepped closer, my fingers brushing the parchment, and as I did, visions flooded my mind, battles in deserts and mountains, shadows of figures wielding unimaginable power, guardians falling, and a girl, Layla, standing alone, defiant, yet carrying the weight of all those who came before her. I gasped, staggered, almost overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of it all. She watched me, her eyes steady. You see now, do you not? The life you knew, the farm, the valley, the simple rhythms of day and night was preparation. Every moment of peace was training for the chaos that follows. And now, it begins in earnest. Before I could respond, the ground trembled violently. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling. A roar echoed through the cave, and I realized with horror that the shadowed figures from before had found us. But they were no longer scouts, they were leaders, warriors whose presence radiated a darkness I had never encountered. Layla drew a thin blade from her sash, its edge glimmering faintly. Stay behind me, she instructed. They will test you. Your mind, your heart, your courage, they will strike at all three. Remember what I have taught you. The figures emerged, cloaked in black, their eyes glowing faintly red. One stepped forward, and a voice as cold as ice spoke, Layla of the Guardians. You are far from safe. Hand him over, and perhaps we shall spare your lineage. I felt a surge of something deep within me, a power, a determination I had not known existed. My hands shook, my breath came in short gasps, but I stepped forward, placing myself beside Layla. He is not yours, I said, my voice stronger than I expected, and I will not stand aside while you threaten him or anyone I care for. The air thickened with tension. The shadowed figures moved like predators, circling, testing, seeking weaknesses. And then, as if guided by instinct rather than knowledge, I found myself moving in ways I could not have imagined, ducking, sidestepping, even striking when necessary. Layla watched, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You are ready, she whispered, almost to herself. The clash was sudden and fierce. The leaders struck with speed and power, but I discovered that I could anticipate their moves, guided by a clarity that felt like it belonged to someone else, a version of me forged by trials I had not yet faced. Layla fought beside me, her blade dancing, her every movement precise, lethal, yet almost artistic in its flow. Hours, or perhaps minutes, time seemed to bend, passed in a blur of motion and strategy. We were pushed to our limits, testing strength, endurance, and courage. But in the end, we stood victorious, though bloodied and exhausted. The leaders had retreated, leaving behind a warning etched into stone. The path ahead is darker than you imagine. We will return. As I collapsed beside Layla, breathing heavily, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer the man who tended fields from sunrise to sunset. I was something more, something awakened, tempered in the crucible of fear and challenge. And yet, even in victory, I understood that this was only the beginning. Layla knelt beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. You did well, she said softly, her gaze piercing. But know this, the trials will escalate. The enemies you face are not bound by time or mercy. They will test your mind, your heart, and your spirit. And soon, you will discover truths about me, about my lineage, and about yourself that may shake you to your very core. I looked at her, at the valley now shrouded in night, the distant mountains hiding secrets and dangers, and I felt a thrill unlike anything I had ever known. Fear and excitement intertwined, forging a resolve that could not be undone. The journey had become more than survival. It was no longer about the farm, the valley, or even myself. It was about destiny, about courage, about facing darkness that no ordinary man could endure, and I had chosen, willingly, to walk this path. And at the center of it all, guiding, protecting, challenging me, was Layla, the girl who had arrived in my life like a desert wind, who had awakened something inside me I never knew existed, and who had shown me that the ordinary life I had known was merely the prologue to an adventure that would define the very essence of who I was meant to become. The night stretched on, filled with a tense silence, and I understood that sleep would not come easily. The world outside was alive with threats, mysteries, and possibilities, and the dawn would bring new challenges, new revelations, and the next step on a journey that had only just begun.